So, thank you for joining me on the Dan Hipkiss podcast again. I'm joined by Big Loz, Uncle Loz, Laurence Shahlaei, whatever you want to call him. Incredible strongman coach, the voice of Strongman 2021. So, yeah, thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me, mate. I'm looking forward to it. Obviously, you came on my show, we had a great chat, and now I'm on the other end of the mic, so this is more nerve-wracking for me.
It's really, yeah, I thought, everyone knows you as sort of the voice of Strongman at the moment. I think a few people might have forgotten that you've got those for a reason. So I thought it'd be really good to have a chat and sort of reintroduce the world to Laurence Shahlaei.
Brilliant.
The first thing is, for people who don't know, have you got like a brief, when was your first Worlds? What have you won, obviously?
Yeah, I've had an amazing career in Strongman. Obviously, a lot of people only really know me since I retired from Strongman. There's a lot of people that don't realise I was a very good competitor. I started Strongman back in 2005. My first World's Strongest Man was 2008. I've competed at Worlds 11 times, finished 4th in 2011, which is my highest placing at Worlds. Won Europe's Strongest Man in 2016, the Ultimate Strongman World Championships in 2016. I've won countless Giants Live and Champions League shows. I believe I've won more. I'm the second. I'm second in the list of the most international wins for a British athlete ever, behind Jeff Capes.
That's not bad.
So, Jeff's at number 1 and I'm at number 2 in terms of international wins for a British athlete.
That's pretty amazing. And it seems like you're in a situation where you might add a couple more.
Well, we'll see.
Or have a good go at it, at least.
Yeah, doing a comeback, which I'm really looking forward to. I wouldn't even call it a comeback. It's one competition. People keep saying, are you going to look at World's Strongest Man or anything beyond it? Literally focused on the Giants Live Classic at the Royal Albert Hall. Really excited to, I get to compete against the last 2 winners of World's Strongest Man.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing lineup there as well.
It's a hell of a lineup. I said yes to doing it before I saw the official lineup, and I saw it. I was like, oh, kind of throw myself in the deep end with this one. But what a better way to go out than against the best guys in the world.
Yeah.
For me at the moment, it is probably going to be my last competition. Mentally, I'd love to keep competing, but physically, my body's feeling after, almost 20 years doing the sport, it takes its toll.
Yeah.
And I've just got certain injuries that I'm struggling to get over. And then that makes me frustrated in where I'm not performing at my optimum level.
Yeah, I suppose you are incredibly aware of what your optimum level is. So the gap between it is...
It's very difficult because, people look at my training and say, oh, you're doing really, really well. And that's nice. It's nice to have people kind of, praise you and say you're doing well. But yourself, you coach some of the best guys in the world. If they're 10% off their best, at that level, that's huge.
Yeah.
You can still look impressive in any gym that you go in, but being kind of, even 5% off at that level is a big difference in terms of performance.
Such a small... The margins are so fine at that level.
Yeah.
If
you're talking split seconds makes a difference on speed events. 1 rep can make a difference on rep events. 10 kilos makes a difference on max events. So being a little bit off your best against the best guys in the world is mentally very, very tough, because I'm the kind of person, I don't really like to just turn up and take part. I either want to be there and it's not so much the winning, but I want to be at my best. I want to be able to perform and think, right, I'm hitting PBs, I'm still getting better. And that's probably what I'm struggling with more than anything. But I'm still really grateful to have this opportunity to go against the best in the world. And I believe on certain events I can still hold my own.
100%.
But more than anything, just looking forward to it. And then I'm so busy and involved in Strongman that I'm quite blessed, really, because I think when I injured myself at Worlds in 2019, I was in a very bad mental place. It was really tough for me. I'd spent a good part of 18 years being the strongman was everything for me.
Yeah.
I got to a high level, and then it's like I had a few years of injuries and started to suffer, my performances were going down, and you kind of bring yourself back from an injury and then to get another one and knock yourself down. I felt kind of useless. I was kind of sat on the sofa over there. We had a young child at the time, and I felt kind of like a failure.
Yeah.
It was mentally very, very difficult. You know, I'm very lucky that I've got a supportive family, you know, a great wife that helps and supports me, but I had to start looking at things differently, thinking, okay, there's more important things to me now than just performing in strongman.
Yeah.
So I started to think, you know, outside the box, how can I do something with the 18 years that I've put into the sport? What do I enjoy doing? I've coached for the last 10 years, you know, just a selection of clients. I thought, right, I'm going to start pushing my coaching. Because I didn't need to be running around and, you know, active to do that. I could program, I could talk to people, I could analyze people's training videos, and it didn't matter that I was sat on the sofa doing that. So I started focusing on that. Then when kind of lockdown hit, I was sat again bored. I like to keep busy, and I was thinking, well, you know, I want to talk about strongman. So started making some videos, you know, doing some history videos. I think we did like one on the history of the log lift and the history of the Atlas stones.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed those videos.
Yeah, people seem to really enjoy them, so we started kind of doing a few more, and that side of things took off. And then I started talking to a lot of the past greats, and you know, I'm a real anything that I like. So I'm a big like wrestling fan, UFC fan. I'm a bit of a geek when it comes to like science and, you know, space and history and dinosaurs, and obviously strongman. And I've always kind of been interested in the history of anything I've got myself into.
Yeah.
So for me to look back at what the original guys did was really cool. Bring, you know, let the new fans see where it all started.
Yeah.
Because we often see people say, "Oh, strongman's too light," blah blah blah. Well, you should look at some of the events they did back in the 70s. You know,
Yeah.
or like throwing a tire or wrist rolling.
It's some of the events, like, it's sort of easy to take the piss a little bit because you think,
what the hell are they doing?
What are they doing? But then you realise that it's probably still really hard.
Yeah. And the thing is, I mean, you look at the Atlas stones, the original kind of the McGlashan stones, I think they went up to 140 kilos.
Yeah, but they had to run in for like...
And it's not even that. I mean, you've got novice guys saying, "Oh, that's too easy, you know, I can do that." Well, these guys had never touched an Atlas stone back then. You know, there was no tacky to lift, there was no gyms where you could train on these events. And if you've never touched a stone, 140 kilo stone without tacking is still really hard to do. But obviously the sport has progressed massively, and now there's gyms everywhere that have equipment. There's coaches working with lots of athletes, so people, you know, you watch, say, Bill Kazmar lift a log back in the 80s. There was no technique.
He was just strong.
Brute strength.
Yeah.
And, you know, I challenge anyone to try and still lift the log the way he did. They're going to struggle. We've evolved, we've kind of learned better techniques, better training methods, but the power of those guys was still very, very impressive.
Yeah. Do you think part of that is down to, because Bill Kazmar is going to win, like, if he's doing something, he's going in there to win. Do you think that is sort of ageless? So if Kaz was born 20 years ago, he'd be hitting a 180, 200 log? Or do you think the sport's moved on so much that it's sort of inconceivable to think?
I think guys from the past could definitely keep up. I think, you know, like we said, if you look at the way people train now, it's evolved in terms of how they trained back then. The nutrition has evolved. You know, the recovery has evolved. So someone like Kaz, or any of the greats from the past, if your level to be the best is here, then, you know, Kaz was aiming to be here.
Yeah.
But if the target was there, then Kaz is going to aim to be there. So it's, you know, I still think these guys from the past that were greats would still be greats, you know, in the modern era.
Yeah.
Particularly someone like Kaz. I think he had the static strength to cope with the guys these days.
Yeah. The insanity to cope with anything that turned up.
You see that sort of mental state in certain athletes where they are just willing to go to the deepest, darkest places to be the best that they can be. And I think, you know, I love comparing different generations, but it's a very difficult thing to do because of so many different factors that come into play. Like, you know, training methods, like nutrition, like, you know, supplementation, recovery, all these kind of things are, you know, have evolved. So even the equipment that we lift on, you can't compare like a Bill Kazmar deadlift to what the guys are deadlifting now.
Yeah, because he was on a bar.
Yeah.
You will be deadlifting on a bar it's made by someone.
The suits that we can use now have kind of evolved.
It's not just denim sewn into.
Yeah, the bars that they use, the calibrated plates, all these things have an impact on the performance. So I do believe the strength level has gone up. I don't think it's as great as maybe, it's certainly gone up on the events. I think the actual gym strength is a little bit better.
But not that huge.
Not as huge as it looks in terms. I think the talent in the amount of great athletes has massively increased.
Yeah.
You had 3 or 4 guys that were supreme back then, whereas now you've got 100 guys.
Yeah, you have.
You've got every
Jeff
single
Cates,
guy that goes to Worlds.
Phil Kazmaier, John Paul, Jamie Reeves.
Yeah, those guys were unbelievable.
That's your top 4. They're going to battle it out.
Whereas now, you saw Novikov. He's a great strongman.
Yeah.
This year didn't make the final of World's Strongest Man. Next year he might come and win.
Yeah, it's so deep, and that's why people said, about Luke's group he got, and it's not just Luke. Any strongman there who wants to win World's Strongest Man, you've got to beat everyone at Worlds.
Exactly that.
And that's hard. They're at Worlds for a reason. They are. As I think we said on your video, if someone's got a bad event at World's Strongest Man, they're not bad at that event.
No.
They're just not.
Yeah, no, it's so true. I've been criticised being bad at stones before at Worlds because I haven't made, maybe haven't finished the stone run. But I'll go to, a Giants live show in North America and win the Atlas stones.
Yeah.
So it's not like I'm rubbish at stones. It's just maybe compared to Tom Stoltman, I look rubbish. But compared to all these people watching, telling me I'm rubbish, I'd still kick their asses.
It's really easy to tell people how bad they are rather than get a bit better yourself. But
as we said, at that level where all the guys are so good, 2% makes such a difference in terms of overall performance. And there's so many guys that are so good at so many different events. So you need to have that consistency to be permanently performing at the top level.
Yeah, totally agree. I think... because your first Worlds was 2008?
Yep.
What's changed in that time? Because you've been heavily involved essentially since you started at Worlds. How do you think that's evolved?
I think the talent pool has just got bigger and bigger. I think the popularity of the sport has grown massively. Certain athletes have taken it to new levels. So when I started, it was all about Marius Pujanovsky.
Yep.
And then, Zdrunas Savickas came in, you have Derek Poundstone, then you had Brian Shaw, who kind of took it up another level. Then you have the likes of, Thor Bjornsson, Eddie Hall on his deadlift, taking, the boundaries on certain events to crazy new levels. Once someone goes to those levels, then a load of other guys think, well, if that guy's done it...
That's a level now.
Yeah, I'm going to do that now. And, it just all pushes the level up in different areas. And there's so many good athletes. I think one thing that has really, maybe not, I'm sort of in two minds about this, where there's certain athletes now that just focus on one particular event, or maybe 2 events, which is great because it gives them opportunity. But strongman for me was always about who's the best all-round athlete. So whereas now we have individual competitions, so you get the Deadlift World Championships.
Yeah.
So now you have guys that just focus on the deadlift. And people will look at those guys and say, oh, they're amazing. They're amazing at the deadlift. Doesn't necessarily make them an amazing all-round strongman.
They're not doing the rest of that competition, though.
If you look at Marius Pujanovsky, for instance, who was an incredible strongman, he wasn't the best deadlifter, he wasn't the best log lifter, but he was good enough and he'd be incredibly good at everything else.
He'd beat the best deadlifter in log, he'd beat the best log presser in deadlift, and he'd just stay nice and consistent and won a lot.
Definitely. I like seeing all the top guys competing against each other. So I really do. As much as it's great to break these records, I still prefer seeing contests and who's the best all-round strongman. Being the best at one event, although that's great, it's not what strongman's about for me.
No, it becomes a bit more powerlifty. And, do a single event. And I think personally, seeing max deadlift got a little bit boring because there's only, other than Thor, so many times you can see people not pull 500 kilos.
Yeah.
But 400 for reps again, that was incredible.
Yeah.
For me, that was one of the most impressive feats of deadlifting was, we're going to pull 400 for reps. And I think Mark Felix said when he started, which will be a similar time to you, I think.
Yeah, Mark started a bit before me, but I think the world record was like 4:10.
Yeah, I think he said 5 or 6 people had ever pulled 400.
Well, I remember doing one of the Giants live shows, and literally every single athlete in the lineup was a 400 plus puller.
Yeah.
I think it was the first time ever you'd had that. Literally everyone in the lineup pulled over 400 kilos. Now, if you're a 400 kilo deadlifter, people on the internet say you're rubbish.
Yeah.
It's quite scary when you think about it. Because the standard has been put up so high now. But it's, trust me, 400 kilos is a massive deadlift.
Yeah, I sort of had a theory that you've only got so many 400 kilo deadlifts in a career. And you saw, like, I think Janasha pulled a stupid number of reps at that competition. And it just broke him almost for a year. Obviously, he got injured, but I think pulling that amount of weight, like 400 kilo yoke's heavy.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't feel good. Like,
I think this is something that athletes do need to be careful with now, particularly as the sport's progressed, is understanding, energy expenditure and being selective about the shows that you do. Because you can't just put your body through the mill month after month after month without something, giving.
Yeah, at some point,
They do need to be, I did too many competitions early on in my career. That's something I would have changed. I did way too many shows. But even then, the shows were lighter than they are now.
But it's heavy for the time, especially, it's still world's strongest man. It's still the pinnacle of the sport. So I think the way to compare present day strongmen to past is like a percentage of a world record. So 400 for reps, 80% of the world record.
Yeah.
They're doing 300 for reps, but it's still probably about...
Well, I remember breaking the strongman deadlift world record. Myself and Brian Shaw both hit 430 in 2010, I believe. So to see how far it's come since then, it's quite scary.
Yeah, I think it equates to someone doing like a 7-second 100 meters, that jump up.
Absolutely crazy.
So why did you start Strongman?
Honest reason I started, I've always been sporty. From a very young age, I was, from the age of 3, I did Kung Fu. I was British champion as a junior at Kung Fu. I did athletics, rugby, table tennis, which is always a funny one to go from to then strongman. But whatever I did, I was always competitive.
Yeah.
Just one of those people that if I'm going to do something, I want to be good at it.
Yeah.
And then, I was always a massive fan of strongman. Just used to love watching it as a kid. Fascinated by these big hulks on TV that,
it's amazing to see.
Or, lifted these crazy weights. I used to love watching like rock lifting and the Flintstone lift. I used to remember seeing that, thinking that was really cool.
Joe Onasai and
Gary Taylor, doing the Flintstone
massive stone wheels.
Yeah, I just thought it just looked really cool. Always enjoyed any sort of strength challenge, even from a very young age. And I remember going to I used to live in Cheltenham, and we went to some hills with my dad, and I found these rocks that had numbers written on them. Like, you see in strongman comps where there's these rocks, and I was trying to lift them. And I later found out, I met the guy that the stones belonged to, who actually ended up being one of my first coaches, a guy called Nick McKinless, who's, I think he won the British under 105s many years ago now, and he's a professional stuntman. But it was kind of funny to think I found those stones, and then we became friends.
Yeah, that's an amazing.
But yeah, I just used to love watching strongman on TV, and eventually I was like, do you know what? I'm going to try it. Joined a gym, found a competition, and literally within 6 months of my first stepping foot in a gym, I did my first competition. I never trained any events at all. Did well in the show. Was naturally, like, we did a farmer's walk. I was very good at that. I think in the gym I deadlifted 230 for one. We had to do 220 for reps in this competition. And I ended up doing 14 reps. I was like, okay, you haven't been pushing yourself as hard as you probably could in the gym. I realised I'm a bit stronger than maybe I thought. A couple of events, the last event was like a medley, and I got to an Atlas stone. didn't have a clue what I was doing on loading the sack of stone. Ended up on my knees trying to roll it up my body.
Amazing.
Like, you know, I look back at that and think, what the hell was I doing? Didn't work, clearly. Ended up, I think I was in 4th place out of 30 odd guys, and I dropped down to 8th. So my first ever competition came 8th. The guys that won had all been training on the kit. I'd never touched any of the kit. And I just got the bug for it. I was like, I really love this. And then I found another competition, which was an open level show.
Yep.
I didn't want to bother with like low level comps. I wanted to go against the best guys I could, and get my ass kicked and learn from it.
Yeah.
So I went to an open level comp. I think there was about 9 guys in this show, and I ended up second to a guy called Jay Hughes. Jay was a very good, younger strongman back then. And then after that, I think my 3rd comp was Midland Strongest Man.
Nice.
But I won. So my progress was very quick. And I literally went from starting Strongman in 2005 to getting to my first World's Strongest Man in 2008.
Yeah, that's probably one of the quickest.
It's pretty quick, in terms
accelerations
of progress.
into the sport.
Yeah. And I found I was naturally good at like moving events. So things like the yokes, farmers walks. My pressing was terrible. I was very, very weak in terms of upper body. But my legs, my back, my grip strength were all very good. And I think, doing so many sports from a young age, I was competitive and I could move pretty well. Even though I kind of looked like it was like having like a parkour guy in a fat suit. I was very, very athletic.
But just didn't look like you should have. It's, I remember watching your farmers that I've gone around the internet hundreds of times. I think it was your first Worlds with Puds, and you just shifted.
Yeah,
so
that was my the second Worlds, I think, in the blue top.
Yes.
I think Puds beat me, but I think I was second or something like that. But it was good to get to the final of Worlds and perform, well, and sort of show that I belonged on that stage.
So how did you? So you were British Kung Fu champion. Was that as a junior?
Yes.
And then, what was the order of the sports between?
So British. I was British champion of Kung Fu. Played rugby. I played rugby and then did table tennis together. So throughout my secondary school years, quite high level in rugby. Played for the Southwest. Played at Kingsholm. Played at Twickenham. I did a competition at Twickenham. And to be quite honest, I probably could have stuck with rugby and done very, very well. Yeah. But I'm just naturally more of an individual. I hated playing rugby and my teammates letting me down. And likewise, I hated letting anyone else down. So I was just suited more to an individual sport. Yeah. Played table tennis for like the county level. But I became a good coach in table tennis, and that's kind of where my coaching kind of started, really.
Okay.
I was a good county level player. I was nothing more than that. But I was a good coach. Coached, a number of international juniors.
Oh, cool.
Worked as a coach for a long time in table tennis, and ended up sort of starting to do strongman at the same time. And I got to the point where I was like, I can't do table because you do like your deadlift workout and then try and play table tennis in the evening.
Back pump.
Yeah, it kind of didn't go together. I sort of had to choose one or the other. And as much as I love table tennis,
it's not strongman.
It's not strongman, and look at the size of me. I'm not. Most table tennis players are tiny.
Yeah, really slight, really short.
Yeah, you've got this big kind of brute kind of trying to play. I'm much more suited to strongman. It was just, there was no real choice, to be honest. The bug had kind of hit me. I was, obsessed with strongman at the time. Yep. And that was the kind of route I was going to go down. So, yeah, I sort of hung up the table tennis racket at that. And, just chose strongman and kind of went from there. And my progression was very, very quick.
So how old were you when you...
So I started strongman at 21.
Yep.
And my first Worlds was 24.
Okay. So have your family always been supportive of you just doing the sport? Yeah,
I've been very lucky to have kind of supportive family. They probably thought I was nuts. I know some of my friends at the time were like, "Why are you wasting your time trying to do this?" Yeah. And I don't blame them for being like that. I think a lot of people have that mentality. But yourself, if you're driven enough, and I wasn't blindly driven. I could see I had very good genetics for it. It wasn't like I was really rubbish and just trying to make up some kind of dream. I clearly had good potential in this sport, but I knew it was going to take a lot of hard work and determination.
Yeah.
And, it was... I've been lucky to have supportive family, particularly my mum, my brother, obviously my wife now. But it's always tough when people are kind of knocking you back and saying, "Oh, why are you wasting your time doing that? You're never going to get to that level." But I didn't let it bother me, to be honest.
No, and then I've
really
always got to that level.
Yeah, and I've always been one of those people that, and it's funny because I'm in a position now where I analyse stuff, I talk about people's performances. But one thing I'll say, and it's it's always been something I've kind of gone off myself. As an athlete, you shouldn't give a damn what anyone else says.
No, you should just be doing it.
If I've got an opinion on someone, that's my opinion. Doesn't mean it's fact. It's you as an athlete have to kind of be mentally strong enough to ignore those. Sometimes it's best not to listen. And if you do listen, let it motivate you. That's what I used to do. I was like, I'm going to prove these bastards wrong.
Yeah,
if they say I can't do it, I'm going to prove them wrong and do it.
Yeah.
And I've never got upset by someone telling me I can't do something. I've just got motivation from it. It's like,
good.
Well,
yeah.
If you say I can't, well, I'm going to prove you wrong.
Yeah, really do it.
I wish sometimes
100%.
people would kind of be like that when I have an opinion, because literally every single person has an opinion.
Yeah.
We all do. But the only opinion that counts is your own. If
Yeah.
you want to be successful at anything, or if you're kind of driven to do something, you've got to make sure you're focused on your goals. And just because someone says you can or you can't is irrelevant. There's plenty of people out there that will blow smoke up your ass telling you you're great. You don't want that either.
No, I remember Kurt Kowalski watching, I can't remember what the film's called, but he's talking about picking training partners, and he said, if you tell me I'm amazing, I don't want to train with you again. And he squatted 1,000 pounds for a double, and his training partner walked up to him and went, that was really good, but you've tied your shoelaces a bit wrong.
Yeah.
So,
I'm not as bad as that, but people will send me videos and it'll be like a PB, and I'm there sort of critiquing their kind of technique. I'm the worst for it myself. I watch my own videos back. I'm like, well, that was crap.
Why did I do that?
Yeah. But I think that's why you make yourself good.
Yeah.
If you're satisfied that you're good enough, you become lazy. So
Yep.
for me, it's always about being better, trying to find ways to improve and get better. And that's all it is. I'm obviously happy when people do great.
Yep.
But if you're, as yourself as a coach, there's no point in us telling people, oh, that was amazing.
No,
because then they're going to get lazy. It's about making them understand, right? They need to knuckle down. They need to improve on these areas. Yeah, that might have been a PB, but you can still do better.
Yeah, and you can always improve in some way. It might not be weight on the bar, but it could be form. It could be speed of a rep. Like, there's always an improvement somewhere, and if you're not willing to look for that, then
I had a good example of that over my career. My PB deadlift was 435 kilos.
Yeah.
Ended up tearing my lat. Had to change my technique a little bit. Never pulled 435 again. But I stopped getting kind of horrible back pump on like deadlift reps because my technique improved. I started to learn how to engage my glutes properly rather than allow my back to take over.
Yeah.
And that then allowed me to perform better on other events in a competition. So although the numbers had come down, the movement was better, and I was then able to, be effective on other events rather than doing the deadlift and then being screwed for the next event.
Yeah, you might drop a place on a max deadlift, but you could win deadlift for reps. Or,
sure.
Yeah, which is, at the time especially, reps was way more common.
Yeah.
Because it's more interesting than... That bar's still on the floor. Wonderful. Next, come on.
Deadlifts become a staple event. I do like seeing a max deadlift, but I like seeing out the stones, but I like variety in strongman, so it's nice to see.
I like a bit of weirdness.
Yeah.
Like
some of the crazy events that we used to see.
Yeah, was it Manfred Hodel Classic in '93 or '94? They had a sheet of plexiglass and a fan.
Yeah.
That's my go-to.
A hurricane.
People are like, oh, we've not had a chance to train on the equipment. It's like, watch this.
That's what I love about some of the old strongman stuff. People go on about wanting to know the exact dimensions of equipment and stuff like that. I like guys like JF Caron, who's just like, it's strongman events.
Yeah,
just get on with
it
it.
Oh, my hamstrings come off. Well, I've got another one. Like, it'll be fine. So who was... Because obviously you watched Strongman as a kid, and then who was your hero strongman?
My hero was probably Magnus Samuelsson.
Yeah.
He was the kind of real... before that, I used to watch, a lot of guys, but when I really got into strongman was sort of like the 90s.
Yeah.
And Magnus kind of, he was the one, the first one I really remember thinking, he's the guy I want to win. You know, I want him to win. And I just used to like watching him. You luckily, you know, got to meet him and compete against him at the early stage of my career, and you know, it's nice because he's such a lovely guy. Cool. Yeah. But sometimes it's not always good to meet your kind of heroes and stuff. But he's genuinely a great guy. My opinions in terms of, you know, at the time as a kid, like, he was the best.
Yeah.
Now I look back and I don't see him as the best. And that's, you know, he was a great strongman, don't get me wrong, but he wouldn't be in my sort of top 5 of all time.
No,
but he was the one.
Had something about him as well.
He just had great charisma. You know, his wife as well was always with him, which, you know, they seemed to have good chemistry. But I used to just, I must have watched him 10 years, and you know, he won World's Strongest Man, but I wanted him to win every single year.
Just keep winning.
Yeah.
Was it video with Sven Carlson he did?
Yes.
World's Strongest Arms.
Was it that one? I think they did. They were with Colin Bryce. Those videos. The one with Sven is hilarious. And, I think Sven's kind of ordering a pizza upside down from the menu that's upside down.
And then he did. There was a few technique videos, and I still go back to that. Like the arm over arm.
Yeah. It's
the perfect arm over arm technique.
He was perfectly built. He had great technique. He kind of shows you how he kind of puts his stronger hand first and like locks the other hand in. Yeah. I watched all those videos, and I've watched so many older videos of strongman to try and learn from them. Yeah. I used to do that all the time, and you know, you can always learn from the guys from the past. And just pick up little tips here and there. I think Conor McGregor says it really well, but you just take little things from everyone and figure out what works best for you as an individual. I mean, I know you're very similar to me in this approach, in that I don't coach everyone the same way.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, you've got to find out, every athlete's built differently.
Yeah.
So textbook doesn't necessarily work for every single lifter, and you've got to try and find these little kind of intricacies that bring the best out of that individual.
Yeah.
I used to love finding out different ways that just seem to work, and likewise, you know, just because I deadlift in a certain manner doesn't mean I train other people to deadlift like that, because
100%. Yeah.
You know, I'm very powerful in my quads. I get good leg drive. Other athletes need their hips in a higher position. They get a lot more out of their hamstrings and glutes, and it's just little intricacies like that that fascinate me about learning different, you know, types of lifting.
Yeah, it's really interesting that I think it was Ed Cohn who said there is no such thing as a perfect rep, but there's your perfect rep.
Exactly.
And find that and stick to that.
Yeah.
Like people, I get messages and like there's comments on YouTube, and it's like, why doesn't Tom try like deadlift how Eddie does? It's like, because Tom's nearly a foot taller than him. Like, they're different people.
This is the funny thing. You get like a deadlifter like Eddie. Technically, you wouldn't teach a lot of people to deadlift how Eddie deadlifts.
No.
But it works perfectly for him.
Yeah.
Look at Jerry Pritchett. Jerry Pritchett's techniques, in terms of textbook, is awful.
Yeah.
But it works for him. You take Usain Bolt as a sprinter.
Terrible sprinter.
No one's going to teach someone to sprint like Usain Bolt, but it works for him.
Yeah.
And it's understanding that. And then the problem is you get someone like Kletterkalk that will then try and copy maybe an Eddie Hall stance to deadlift. He's not built like that. You've got to figure out the most effective way for you as a lifter. You watch Adam Bishop deadlift. Brilliant technique for Adam Bishop.
Yeah.
Maybe not for someone that's much, much wider in the hips like a Brian Shaw.
Yeah.
Because, you know, his stance is going to be completely different.
Yeah, I think that realisation that there is... I mean, Bishop's deadlift is my favourite deadlift to watch.
Yeah.
But it won't work for you. It won't work for Tom.
Yeah.
It won't work for almost anyone other than Bish. Like, and it's the same with not just strongman, just all of life in general. Like, just because this works for so-and-so, you've got to find your way, and your path, and embrace that. So what do you think about the future of strongman? Like, is there a 600 deadlift in 20 years? Is there...
I think it will all depend on kind of equipment and advancements. You know, look at one thing I don't like is kind of seeing a lot of these deadlifts in straps now, where they're turning a 9-inch deadlift into a 12-inch deadlift.
Just on their fingertips.
Yeah. Now, if you can get away with it, by all means get away with it. But I think we need to see some strict kind of rules brought in.
Yeah.
To to just be able to compare different generations.
Yeah,
Because,
so back to the ifs model, but not necessarily
not necessarily,
in all ways.
you know, like I said earlier, the records, although they're great, are not what kind of got me into the sport.
Yeah.
I like the dynamic movement in strongman, the variety of events.
Yeah.
I love seeing different types of deadlifts, different competitions. So, you know, the Hummer deadlift, for instance, in one comp looks really cool. Is it the NAC deadlift they did at World's Strongest Man this year?
Looked amazing.
Yeah,
really impressed.
A variety of deadlifts. Then, if you're a good deadlifter and you're then going against the best guys in the world, you'll still come out on top.
Yeah.
Whereas going for the, you know, I understand the kind of novelty of the deadlift world record, but for me it was always, you know, watching the Flintstone deadlift, watching, you know, pulling.
That was
pulling aeroplanes and, you know,
such a brilliant. I forgot all about that deadlift. Yoko Ahala pulling. You pull over 400 on that set.
Like 410 or something like that.
But like again, terrible deadlift.
Nose bursting with blood and
hand like locked out at knee height because his back's like his upper back's just folded in half.
But just, you know, awesome to watch.
Yeah, incredible. It's proper, like, to me, proper strongman. Like
very much so. The problem with like the records is that you need the same bar, same equipment kind of used.
Yeah.
To really kind of judge. So for me, it's better when you just see the best guys going head to head on an event.
Yeah, and let the event. It's a deadlift, but it could be axle, it could be double overhand axle. Really mess people up.
That would be interesting. I think Mark Felix would do well on that one.
Yeah. Me and Dale were trying to come up with the ultimate Mark Felix comp.
Yeah.
And it was like Hercules hold, axle, deadlift max, no straps.
Yeah.
Deadlift for reps, Dinny Stone pickup, Rolling Thunder. That's it. And it's like, on those events, there's no one in the world.
No one's beating Mark on those.
So, did you say Mark was in the sport before you?
Yeah, Mark started, I believe, around 2002. I started 2005.
Okay, so was there like not a British team, but was there a feeling of sort of camaraderie between the British guys like there is now?
Yeah, we used to do team competitions back then. We used to go over to Ukraine and represent Great Britain as a team. So I remember going over there. It was myself, Ollie Thompson, Terry Hollands and Jay Hughes. We went and represented the UK. That was really cool. Obviously for me, when I started, the top three British athletes were Felix, Terry and Ollie Thompson. They were the kind of three guys that I really looked up to. So to be able to compete against them all, you know, has been great. And, you know, obviously there's been competitive rivalries, but I class them all as good friends.
Yep.
And, you know, I guess if I'm honest, I've probably competed against Terry more than any other British athlete. I think our head-to-head record is something. I think we've competed nearly 30 times against each other. So, you know, it's been a long career.
Have you got a score sheet of who's on top?
I actually did. I did an interview for Strongman Archives last night, actually, and that was the question. I think it was 27 times we've competed against each other, and I've won 16 out of the 27.
That's not bad. That's
so,
good.
I've come out on top on that one. But he's beaten me at the really important one, the World's Strongest Man 2011. That was, you know, my chance to get on the podium, and he got me there. So. But it's great because people try and make out these kind of rivalries, and when you're a competitor, you want to win.
Yeah.
But it's, you know, you get to the stage I'm at now. I look back and I sort of just, you know, love every minute I've done in the sport. You know, the wins, the losses. It's not always just about winning. You know, I can look back and I learn a lot more when I lose as well.
Yeah, because if you've won, you've won.
Yeah, and having those guys as your biggest rivals, you know, the better they get, the better it made me get.
Yeah.
So, you know, I thank them a lot for pushing me and making me a better athlete at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think it's just really interesting to see that at maybe lower levels of strongman, there's like fierce, aggressive rivalries. And then you get, I remember being at Worlds and I can't remember what the event was, but someone finished their run and then went up to the next person. Bear in mind there may be a point between them and was like, oh, you need these gloves, or it was like, oh, their shoes were wrong. And like immediately it's like, well, I've given 100%, he's going to give 100%, and whoever's better will come out on top.
I think after a while, you get to that point where you have to have respect for these guys.
Yeah.
Because you know yourself how hard it is to do the sport that we do. And at the end of you want to beat the person at their best.
Yeah.
I don't want to be the best because I was lucky. I want to be the best because I'm the best.
Yeah.
You know, because I've beaten the best. You know, it's like Ric Flair says, if you want to be the man, you've got to beat the man. And you know, for me, it was always like that. You know, I wanted to be the man, obviously.
Yeah, but I think it's clear to see from sort of how you've carried yourself through the sport, and not just in the sport directly, but everything you do, you seem to want to be really good at doing.
That's just my competitiveness. I've always wanted to be good at whatever I do. I'm not very... I don't like being average. You know, I give 100% and I want to be as good as possible, or I lose interest.
Yeah, no, I'm exactly the same. Like,
Yeah.
I was speaking to someone the other day and they're like, oh, you've obviously got really good coping mechanisms, you do all this. I was like, no, I'll do something and give it 100%.
Yeah.
Or I'll just not do it.
Yeah,
like,
that's pretty much
not
me.
coping.
I'm all or nothing. So I'm lazy as hell, or I'm totally committed and give 100%.
Yeah. So, sort of to touch on your childhood a little bit, you half Iranian, half English.
Yeah.
So because Iran as a country seems to just produce phenomenal, really motivated athletes. Do you think that's part of your upbringing? Is it a national thing? Like
certain sports in Iran are extremely popular, particularly things like wrestling, weightlifting, those types of sports. Very, very well respected over there. So my father's brother was a wrestler.
Okay.
So good genetics, I think, in terms of
freestyle. Or...
Yes.
Oh,
yeah,
cool.
so
Yeah, I did a bit of freestyle.
You know, my dad actually played volleyball. Very, very good volleyball player. But I was brought up in the UK. My mum's from Newcastle. My granddad on her side of the family was a great athlete as well. Very good. He actually played football for Newcastle.
Oh, cool.
And he was a great sprinter. So both sides of the family have got good genetics in terms of athletes.
So it's sort of all funneled down into...
both myself and my brother are good athletes, actually. But I was probably the more driven to be an athlete. He's naturally good, but didn't want to. Yeah. You know, I'd probably say he's probably more talented than me.
Yeah.
But I was so driven on being an athlete. That's all I ever wanted to be. You know.
Okay.
From a young age, I wanted to be a pro athlete. It was kind of at one point it was rugby. You know, I thought about table tennis for a while, but I just wasn't good enough. And then obviously found strongman. You know, I look back and think, why the hell did I want to be a pro strongman? When you could have looked back and think, I probably should have chosen rugby. Rugby was much better in terms of prospects and you know, finances. But I was just, you know, madly in love with strongman. And I think it's important to do something that you love.
Yeah, totally.
That's made me, and this is something I think is important to get across. I've had a lot of knockbacks in strongman, and people always ask me, how have you kind of come back from them? Because I love what I do.
Yeah.
You know, and you've got two options. You know, I could give up, and I'd never have achieved half the stuff that I achieved, or you pick yourself back up and you try and learn from the mistakes and you try and come again. And that's what I did. You know, time and time again, I got knocked back. I figured out what I was doing wrong. I learned from the mistakes and came back better. And you know, eventually got to the point where I can look back now. It was hard, you know, because you're always trying to look forward. And I never won World's Strongest Man, which was obviously my ultimate goal. But I did win a World Championship, so I won Europe's Strongest Man. I won countless British titles, broke records, won other international shows. So I've got nothing to, you know, be ashamed of. Which it took me a while to sort of get that mental thought. I was always disappointed in myself. I was always like, I'm not good enough. And some of that comes
one trophy you've not got compared to hundreds.
Yeah. I guess, you know, I think because World's Strongest Man is the biggest event in the sport, it's what sort of got me into the sport in the first place. That would have obviously been the ultimate to be on, you know, top of the podium there. I was unfortunate to be in the sort of dominant era of Zadrunas and Brian Shaw, bashing out 8 titles between them,
Yes.
not letting anyone kind of squeeze in there for a few years. But, I've managed to, I've beaten Zadrunas a couple of times in other shows. Brian's the one athlete I've never beaten, actually.
No.
So, and in his I don't believe Brian is prime Brian anymore. As good as he was this year, I think probably go back to 2016 was the last time we saw him at his best. So I think he did amazing this year. And that's not to take anything away from the other guys. I just, same as Zadrunas. I don't think we're ever going to see top Zadrunas again. As much as it's great to see him compete, Father Time sort of catches up with these guys. And I've said this many times, they can get to maybe 90% of their best,
which is still
really dangerous,
still really good.
But the younger guys are just getting better and better.
Yeah, and I think I've got a feeling Z broke his first powerlifting record when I was 2. So like 92 or 93, around then. And I think that record still stands because they changed the weight classes for IPFE reasons. That it's easier to change weight classes than it is to ban everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's been in the sport for a long time.
I think he said this is his 30th season on the post the other day.
Yeah.
Which is mental. I mean, I've done nearly 20. And to think of doing 10 extra on top of that.
Yeah, another 50%.
Shows just how incredible he is.
Yeah. So do modern era, who is the best strongman of all time? Or
for me, Zadrunas is the best of all time.
Yeah,
I say that every single time. I think Brian Shaw is a close second.
Yeah.
But for me, when you look at world titles, so we go on about World's Strongest Man. He's got 4 World's Strongest Man titles, but he also has 2 IFSA world titles.
Yeah.
So in my mind, he's a 6-time World's Strongest Man winner.
Yeah.
An 8-time winner of the Arnold's,
which is insane.
Absolutely. He's won more international shows than anyone else. Yeah. He's had the longest career out of everyone. He literally, he's the oldest man to ever win World's Strongest Man. He's still the current log lift record holder, even though we've got so many great log lifters that have been trying to break that record, and I'm sure it's just a matter of time now. But the fact that he's held that record for, I believe, about 15 years.
Yeah, it's just not crazy to think that I think the only person to beat his record was it Raymonsburg Manis broke it
for like a month or so.
Yeah, until C decided to lift a log again.
And then it was all about Zadrunas. And I believe if Zadrunas was in his prime, with the likes of Luke Graham, Iron Bibby, etc., pushing him, I think he would have done 240, maybe even 250.
Yeah, it's such a mad number to say, but
it is. But he's only ever just sort of been beating his own record.
Yeah,
he's
tiny
never
bit
really
of leg
had
drive.
someone to come in and push him. So I don't think I think he's past his best. And that's maybe he'll prove me wrong. I don't believe he will at 46 years old, but he has had the best career ever.
Yeah,
longevity, world records, titles. No one even comes close.
Yeah, there seems to be always a caveat of, except for Big Z. Yeah. That was the second biggest log at Worlds for Luke, other than Big Z.
Yeah.
So, that's the heaviest this. If we ignore him,
well, I've won, I think I won about 8 international shows, and I think if it wasn't for Zadrunas, I could have probably doubled that.
Yeah.
The amount of times I've been second to that man at a big show is frustrating.
Because he's just there.
Yeah.
You see, I remember talking to him when we were in Manila, and I think he said he won Lithuania's Strongest Man 10 times, had a break, came back, won it 15 times. He's like, I just organise it now because it's boring. I've run out of room.
Let's be honest, there's some really good strongmen in Lithuania.
Yeah.
It's not like he's winning against nobodies.
People in Lithuania who are the bad ones there.
Yeah.
I think, Vidas Plakaitis on log. He's a really good log lifter.
You got Vidas Lalas, who at one point was second in the world.
Yeah.
Zadrunas. Came second to Zadrunas in Lithuania in his Strongest Man.
He's such a small country, or in terms of population, quite a small place, and it just produces absolute monsters. And then Zadrunas just happened to be at the top of that pile as well. I think, 25 comps in a year and 25 wins is
pretty mental,
including Worlds and an Arnold.
That's just insane.
So have you competed at the Arnold?
Yeah, I did the Arnold's 2012. Unfortunately, I only had 4 weeks to prep for it.
Bloody,
So
it's
I was
bad
invited,
comp for a short.
4 weeks prep, 3 weeks training. I ended up coming 7th, I believe. 7th or 8th, can't remember. But it's a show that you really need 16 weeks to prepare for. And
Yeah.
I did actually really well. I came second on the frame carry.
Was it up the ramp?
Up
then?
the ramp, yeah.
Yeah, what a piece of kit.
Really cool to do. I would have loved a chance to train properly for the Arnolds, particularly when they were doing the heavy yoke and the frame. I think I could have actually done pretty well. Even like the axle was good for me back then, so I believe I could have scored pretty well on certain events. But it's a show that you really need good prep for.
Yeah, it's a few people have said like, oh, so and so going to do the Arnold, and so maybe next year, like not quickly.
No, it's one of those shows. 4 weeks was just
crazy impressive. Like to even turn up with 4 weeks notice.
And like we did I think it was a 208 axle, and I remember sort of just bashing it on my chest. And I got this huge mark on my chest from how heavy it was, and it just took the wind out of me. My best ever axle was 205, so to try and get in to do 208 with 4 weeks prep was never going to happen. I think we had like a 120 dumbbell for reps. It was. I mean, I did the hammer deadlift, only the one time I've ever done it.
That's so cool.
And it was cool, and I pulled 440. It was actually easy, but you only had 3 attempts, so. Because I'd never had the experience of using it before.
So you used one to get into the...
Yeah, and I think I could have done a fair bit more, but it's hindsight, and I think, like most big comps, having that one show where you sort of learn, about the show. I've always said this about World's Strongest Man, the first time you're there, it's very, very different to any other show that you do.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people realise that after they've been. Because they're like,
I'm going to win Worlds.
Yeah, Loz doesn't know what he's on about.
Win Worlds first.
It's a bit different. You've been there, you've seen how different it is.
Oh, it's absolutely mind-blowing to see, like, I think we mentioned it when I was on your channel, that you see people after, like, day 1, and you think, like, they need a week off. Except day 2's tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then there's another day.
Yeah. Maybe
a couple more. Then you get a day off. Then it's the final of World's Strongest Man. It doesn't get easier.
No, it doesn't. And it's just a very different show. And I think you see it, I've seen so many amazing guys. On the one-day shows, they do incredible. They go to Worlds, and they're terrible.
Yeah.
Because they can't cope with the way that it's run.
Even with multi-day shows that aren't World's Strongest Man. Like, you can do really well at, say, UK's, really hard 3-day event.
Yeah.
But to do, essentially, UK's, have a day off, and then do the final of World's Strongest Man, you realise that, to be at Worlds, you're in the top % of the whole world. Then to do well at Worlds, it's incredible. So much respect for, for yourself, who you've not just been to a Worlds and fizzled out. Like, you kept going to Worlds, kept performing well. Must take a lot out of you emotionally.
The toughest thing with Worlds is firstly the length of time that you're there, but also the heats.
Yeah.
The heats are really, really tough because it's like 2 separate competitions. You could have the best events in the final, but the worst events in the heats.
It doesn't matter if your final events are good if you don't get there.
So it was, I've had a few learning experiences at Worlds. 2010 was a real big learning experience because I made the final 2009.
Yeah.
2010, I was like, right, I'm going to focus on the events for the final. I want to save as much energy in the heats. And I ended up not making the final.
It could have been really good.
Yeah. So there's been a few times that the events have been good for me in the final. I've not made it.
Yeah.
And sometimes in the heats, you do get certain events that just throw people off a little bit. And also because the heats are sometimes quite small groups.
Yeah.
Very difficult to get away from anyone. One little mistake can cost you, and then they've brought in the stone off, which I'm not a fan of.
No, just score it like a competition.
Exactly.
And let the best, because the best person will win still.
Yeah.
And the person who comes second would probably have still come second.
Yeah.
But what you don't get is someone who is phenomenal at stones, but middle of the road and can go, it's all right, I'll come third and I'll go through because I'm better.
It's like, in my prime, if we said, right, let's make the last event the yoke.
Yeah.
I could think, all right, I'll risk this, but I'm just going to take it really easy on these first 5 events, and then I'm just going to smash the yoke.
Yeah.
It's probably not the best approach, but you've still got a great chance of coming through.
Yeah.
Because, you're so consistent at that one event. So for me, it's not a fair way to really decide who gets into the final.
No, I think, there's a whole discussion to have about fairness and structure and transparency at World's Strongest Man.
We could have a whole other chat about that.
But, a thing that when I was at Worlds, I had a conversation with Brian Shaw about, and it's been mentioned before, is I think we talked about it a bit as well, like, what do you think needs to happen, not to move Strongman forward, but to the 25 guys who go to World's Strongest Man? How do you make their experience and their life better? Like, what do you think is next for the sport from that?
I think World's Strongest Man have to realise there's a whole sport outside of the World's Strongest Man contest.
Yeah.
Sorry, my throat's going. Yeah. World's Strongest Man is literally one event, and they care about putting their TV show on. But there's been a big sport that's developed from the time World's Strongest Man started. So now we have all these other shows that go on around the world. They need to understand that it's become more than one TV show. And I think that's really important. I think we need proper qualifying system to get.
Yeah.
Maybe not it's not even about the best. Everyone that went to Worlds this year is a great strongman.
Yeah.
But there's also 100 other guys that are all great strongmen.
Yeah.
That just didn't get the chance. So I think it's about trying to create some fairness.
Yep.
Then there's been certain improvements definitely in terms of the way Worlds is run. The way the athletes are treated is much better than it was in the past. They have a good medical team at World's Strongest Man. Warm-ups are now available, whereas they weren't before, which is just crazy to think.
It's nuts that I can't remember who I was talking to. They were going to Worlds. I was like, what jumps do you take? And they're like, I take like 10, 20 kilo jumps on deadlift. Start with an empty bar, then they want 60, 80.
Yeah.
So I've been fortunate enough to be at Worlds before the conversation. I was like, there was an empty bar and then 50 kilo plates.
Yeah, I remember.
That's sure.
I remember getting warmed up for the squat one year. We had, excuse me, we had 220 kilos worth of plates.
Yeah.
And a bar on a forklift truck.
Nice.
So you warmed up to 220 kilos, then you had to go and do the squat, which was 330 kilos. So yeah, pretty big jump. And then I was told I had to do it again because people didn't get enough reps, so they were going to raise the height that they were squatting down to.
Really? That's
so I had to win the squat twice at World's Strongest Man 1 year. Yeah, I did 4 reps. Another guy did 2, and everyone else zeroed in our group.
Right.
I said, this is crap for TV. We're going to raise the height so it's not quite so deep. And the guy that did 2 managed to do 5. So they were like, you can either just go with your 4 from earlier, or you can go again. And this is an hour after I'd cooled down.
Yeah.
I was absolutely furious. Went out there, smashed out 8 reps, and put it down. But things like that shouldn't be happening. No. I've heard this year was really well run, which I'm really pleased to hear. It's great to hear that things are getting better all the time. So, but obviously, 11 years of experience being there, I have seen that progress.
Yeah.
But there's still things that need to get better.
Yeah. No, I think because strongman, there's always been strongman all around the world in some way. You know, you've got the Spanish stone lifters, the Scottish stone lifters. If there's rocks, people will pick them up and say they're better at picking it up than that guy in the pub. But the World's Strongest Man as like an organised sport was a TV show. It was a freak show, basically. Like, they had powerlifters. I mean, mainly powerlifters and a few people who were...
Powerlifters, weightlifters, NFL players.
Yeah, the first year of World's Strongest Man.
Couple of bodybuilders.
Yeah, Franco Colombo, and his
knee.
inside out knee.
It's not this. I think he said it's not dislocated.
I'm a chiropractor.
Yeah.
It's not dislocated.
There's something wrong with it, dude.
Well, if you can see the bottom of your own foot, something's bad.
Yeah. Bless him.
Yeah. So I think that's probably a good time to wrap up.
Cool.
It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
It's been really good.
Yeah, clear that aside from being one of the best British strongmen of all time, just a fan of strongman as well. So yeah, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me, mate. I've enjoyed it.
Is there anything you want to thank, shout out, any of that?
No, I mean, if people want to kind of check out our YouTube page, then Big Laws Official on Big Laws WSM on Instagram. But if you're into strongman, then I'm always around and love talking about it, love promoting it, love commentating on it. You know, always going to train and coach people. So I'm going to be around for a fair few more years yet in the sport.
Ace, that's really good to hear. I'll put all of Loz's social media, YouTube information in the description below on the YouTube video. And thank you for listening. Like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell, all the other stuff that I don't really know what it means, but apparently it's good if you do it. And thank you for listening again.